sometimes it's rough, and it takes all that you've got, but he's been here, just waiting for you to knock. So take his hand and plant your feet on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guest is Prejean. She is a Catholic high school theology teacher and a youth minister. She's going to share with us tonight her method, not her madness, but just her method and her love of Christ. So good to see you, Doug.
You too, Father.
And you have your shirt on again.
Yes, we're wearing the Nazarene shirt again, and this is again just to keep reminding us all that we cannot forget. It's far too easy for us to forget that we still have Christian brothers and sisters throughout the world, especially in the Middle East, Nigeria, and places that are where you have predominant, Islamic religion, running the territory. People are suffering like crazy in these areas. There's a lot of persecution on a lot of levels, even in places like Britain, where you've got these things happening there too. There's laws shifting, and it's becoming more difficult. And of course, in light of what just happened recently here in the U.S. in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we do have to remember to pray, pray, pray. And I just don't know why we're not saying more about this. I just want to encourage everybody listening or watching. Pray a rosary if you're not already. Pray an extra one if you are praying. Get to some extra hours of adoration. Get to extra celebration and sacrifice of the Mass throughout the week. Conversion in prayer is absolutely essential to fight off the evil that is running in such crazy ways, persecuting so many of our Christian brothers and sisters. Pray for the strength for these brothers and sisters of ours. We can't let them feel like they're left alone out there. So that's again what the shirt reminds us of. Just proud to be Nazarene. Nazarene being that term that was used by ISIS. They were painting this symbol, which is actually the 14th letter of the Arabic alphabet. It's a N for Nazarene. And last summer, it was being seen that this was being spray painted on the homes of Christians in the Middle East. ISIS was marking their homes, marking these people for persecution. And so we want to remember our brothers and sisters. So yes, I got to make that pitch again, because we can't forget to keep praying for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they are a real inspiration for Christians everywhere, those who are suffering so terribly for the faith. We in the West have our struggles. We're not near that point, but it's, we have a struggle for marriage, for our culture.
Yeah, persecution's really taking a different form for us right now, especially here in the West.
And I'm still a relatively young man. I feel like I've seen our culture change so much, and you feel a pressure building in our culture that you must submit to this new, what the Pope has condemned, this new gender ideology, this equation of homosexuality and heterosexual love and marriage, and there's more and more pressure. There's going to be penalties. There's going to be financial costs, and hopefully not, but maybe accreditation and education. Who knows what's coming down the road? But they're very aggressive with that agenda, and certainly I've heard a lot of it as a priest. A lot of people are wondering what to do. There's a kind of I felt it as an American. You looked at our Supreme Court and said, you failed to get this right. You failed on the life issues. You failed on the marriage issue. What are you doing up there? You're the elite of our culture, in terms of education and learning and things.
And to know the law, supposedly be able to, express to the country what the law is and how it should be, lived.
And that law is formative, especially for young minds, because we're saying, hey, this is a good thing. And we're arguing as Christians from a natural law perspective that certainly our faith teaches this, but we're saying the natural law, the law that we can know by reason, that binds us all as human beings, that's what we're arguing, that marriage has a definition there that you can't tamper with, you cannot change, and that gay marriage is not equal to traditional heterosexual marriage. In marriage of a man and a woman, you have the joining together of these two for the purposes of procreation to raise and bear, to educate children, to nourish that life. It's a special union. It's different from all other unions because of the sexual complementarity, that they can build up one another, and the gifts the male and the female have that the other does not have, that allows this union to happen, and they can build up the other. That's a special union that the government needs to foster and protect, because it fosters the health of all of society. Mm-hmm. It's a fundamental place of communion, of community, that is strengthening for our culture. When we weaken that by defining and equating it with realities that are not equal to that, it damages all of society.
Sure, yeah, and I think, a great simple phrase is, when we reject God's laws, man's laws will collapse. There's no question. And as we reject these laws, these natural laws, and what has been written by God in society through what we've seen with families for generations, cultures from the beginning, recognize exactly what you just described.
Right.
Regardless of even religious beliefs, communist countries recognize that man and woman was the way to populate their nations and such, in their societies.
And I think this is like the first time in human history that we're doing this. And we're thinking it's a good thing, that we're so enlightened, and that we're doing so well on a cultural level, that the human person is flourishing so well in our culture. Every indicator is that we're suffering more.
Right, right.
There's more anxiety, depression, and despair in our culture than ever before. This group is redefining things because we found the right way. And that's
what they're saying. That's what they're believing, and that's the message that they're preaching and that they're teaching, and it will creep more thoroughly into the school systems, into the education system. It's already there, but it's going to intensify. Yeah. It's going to be, the pressure is going to ramp up. It's going to be harder on parents. I've heard this from even a federal judge up north. I don't want to name the area or the judge, but saying that this is going to be, for some people, it's the challenge in the workplace, in school. If you're a teacher, professor, employee somewhere, you're not going to want to talk about this, because your promotion, your raise, your status, whatever, is going to be seriously threatened. It's already there. And so really what we need to do, first and foremost, is we have to be in prayer. We have to be warriors who go to God. We have to be on our knees. We have to be in prayer. But we also have to respond after the deep prayer with being a witness in the world.
Right. And Pope Francis recently just told the young people in his trip in South America, he said, dream big. He said, have hope and strength, in Jesus Christ through faith. That makes us strong. And to dream big, that yes, we have great challenges that we face today, but God's bigger than all this stuff. And through faith and prayer, we can have the strength, we can have the inspiration. We have the Holy Spirit working through the church, through His body in the world, to combat error, to fight for a healthy culture that nourishes humanity, that supports the family and young people. So we don't want to discourage anybody. No. We want to exhort everyone, including ourselves, to draw strength from Jesus Christ, to go into mission, to evangelize.
Yeah, we've got to rally the troops. Right. Rally the troops to get busy and be aware of the battle, be prepared for it, and engage in it.
So tonight we have a person doing that, Katie Prejean. She's going to share her faith and her strength tonight. So don't go away. Back in a moment.
Welcome back to Life on the Rock. I'm Doug Barry along with Father Mark. We're the Rock House compadres here in the Rock House, hidden far and high away from the enemies of truth.
Have you heard that introduction before?
No, I just
It's been going on for years, actually. So, yeah, and we had to blindfold you, like all the guests, just to get you here safely. And
on pain of death. I can't tell anybody where we are.
That's exactly it. Yeah, she's playing along well. All right, Katie Prejean, nice to have you on the show.
Nice to be with you. Thanks for having me. Really glad to be here.
You are from Lake Charles.
Lake Charles. So if this is Louisiana, I'm in the heel of the boot.
Okay.
So
down there.
Yeah. Good food. Good food.
Yeah. Get fried alligator.
Oh yeah.
Barbecue possum.
Tastes like chicken. Crawfish is not a bug. It's delicious. So come down anytime.
And it tastes like chicken.
No, that does not taste like chicken. That tastes like fish.
Okay. All right. Crawfish or crawfish?
Crawfish. fish.
All right, now I knew this because I've been in Louisiana dozens of times over the years. I got a lot of friends down there, done a lot of ministry work down there. But I know there are people across the country who get that mixed up. Do they crawl? Are these fish that crawl?
Or they call them crayfish. And it's like, it's not a pecan, it's a pecan. It's not a crayfish, it's a crawfish.
Okay.
Get it right, people. So.
And you actually have out down in Louisiana, I've driven past them, you know, the big, they build the big farm beds and everything just to raise the crawfish.
It's a lucrative business. I mean, if you think about a pound probably costs like $5 or $6 boiled. So, I mean, dinner can get expensive, but it's worth it. That's how I reward my volunteers every year with the big crawfish boil. 400 pounds of crawfish, we got the drinks flowing, the crawfish, you dump them out on a table with trash cans, and you just, you go at it, it's great. Wow. So. She's doing on-scene Life on the Rock, and I will feed y'all. So, yeah.
At a crawfish farm.
Write it down, producer. Right? Yeah.
Awesome. All right, she says she's there. All right.
There, yeah.
All right, okay, but you're here to talk about something more profound than crawfish.
Yeah, less messy. Although evangelization is messy, so
yeah, it can be.
It should be.
Yeah. Tell us about your past, where you come from. You're a young lady. You're dating. Louisiana. Raised Catholic? Raised
Catholic, born and raised. My mom was raised Baptist, and she converted when she met my dad. So she's a very zealous lady. So I had two very zealous parents, Catholic school my whole life, same Catholic schools that my dad went to. And then when I was a junior in high school, really had a hard-hitting conversion moment where I realized what I believe needs to be something I understand. It can't just be something my parents told me I had to accept. And so I went through a bit of a crisis in thinking about, if I'm asking questions and I'm getting answers, then I need to, continue asking questions and continue seeking answers, because God's infinite. You can't put him in a box. So I knew I was always going to have something to learn. And so when I went to college, I studied theology. I went to the University of Dallas in Irving, Texas, small liberal arts college with a great books program, so I love to read. I was a nerd that, I sat inside and read my books, or if my mom said go outside, I brought the book with me. So I went to a school where you read books, and I loved to read. And I started studying theology, moved to Chicago for a brief period of time to work as a parish youth minister, and then felt the call to come back home. And so through a series of events with some really incredible moments with the Lord, made my way back to Lake Charles to be a teacher with no formal education training, teaching theology, freshman theology, in the same classroom I took freshman theology, so that was a surreal moment. And then my pastor at my parish growing up called me up and said, hey, I need a youth minister. You want to come be my youth minister? So 2 jobs in 2 weeks, and I was back in Lake Charles, and I don't ever want to leave. So much so that I'm making my boyfriend move. So it's a good place to be. It's a great place to be Catholic. It's a small diocese, 36 parishes, but we are mighty. So we are a mighty, tiny diocese.
Our hearts are large.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the great books project. You're with young people, and you think of that as like very fast-moving social media stuff. How does the great books help you with that?
Well, I was actually just having this debate yesterday with some parents on Facebook about required reading. They were like, it's stupid that our kids have to read books during the summer. Reading turns your brain on to something different than a 30-second video on Facebook or a status on Twitter. It makes you imagine, because you have to picture things in your mind. And so at UD, those of us that were reading, we all read the same books. So a freshman was reading the Odyssey and could talk to a senior about it. So it gave you a common point for conversation, and it gave you something to think about and to dream about and to feel moved by. We're an emotive culture, and books, there's nothing more emotive than a book. And I'm gonna sound really nerdy when I say this, but like I think of books as friends. Like if I walk into a bookstore, it's like, who am I gonna meet? What story am I gonna dive into? And I think when we treat books with respect, treat those stories, whether it's a theology textbook or a Charles Dickens novel, it's gonna give us an experience that's valuable. So the more we read, the better that is. And I appreciated that about college.
On that point there, do you think that people have a harder time with the attention span? Hold on a second, what was I saying? Oh yeah, attention span. Do you think people struggle more with attention span? I heard somebody say recently, we have the attention span of a goldfish.
Oh, we do, which is sad.
Several seconds and we're moving around.
Oh yeah, you get about 7 minutes in the classroom before a kid starts twitching. Right. And so you have to come up with, it keeps me on my toes. I think it keeps us as evangelizers constantly like reevaluating, but I think the mark of truth is when it can capture somebody's attention and it can be held. Because it's not just an idea, it's not just it's a person. And people matter to other people.
Why do you think young people more so, and not even so much young people anymore, it's really has crept up into the middle-aged years as well. people that are older than me. Why do you think the attention span has become such a sticking point for so many people nowadays?
It's a 4-inch screen in your pocket that constantly dings. I mean, if you have something that you constantly want to be looking at, then you're not going to want to look at what's right in front of you. So I was sitting in my house the other day watching TV. My laptop was open next to me, and I was texting my mom all at the same time. 3 screens. My attention was nowhere, but it was everywhere. So I think we have too much coming at us. Isn't it interesting in the Old Testament, Samson got in trouble because he was looking at stuff, right? And it says at the end of, I forget which book, my professor would be mad at me because I'm forgetting, but at the end of one of the books, the Israelites, they took everything that they saw. And what happens to them? They get exiled. So as a culture that's seeing too much, we can't focus on anything. Our brains are too distracted. So I think it starts with our phones. I started going to daily mass when I became a teacher, and I would always bring my phone in with me. And it would buzz, and oh, I'm going to continue praying. Jesus is right there. And then it would buzz again. Oh, just a quick look. Like maybe it's an emergency.
Maybe it's Jesus.
Maybe, yeah, it could be. You never know. The Holy Spirit could
Maybe
call.
he's texting me.
This could be the vocation moment.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Never was. It was Facebook. It was Twitter. It was an email that was not. I didn't need to. There was no priority to anything. Least of all Christ. So I started to leave my phone in my car, which. The fear of maybe it'll get stolen. Oh, but maybe it'll get stolen. Like, thank God, nobody could find me for a little while, Like right now, it's not on me. And you know how freeing that is? I was gonna buy the Apple Watch for my birthday a couple weeks ago. And after I thought about it, not only was the price tag a little too steep, I was like, I don't know if I want my wrist to become how I communicate. It's cool, like Star Trek, neat, but like I'd constantly, I wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be waiting for the text message.
Sure.
So I think that's where the detriment is.
Or we could be texting each other on our watches.
We could be.
The conversation, which I've seen.
Over.
Speaking of confirmation retreats, when you see 8th, 9th graders sitting out in the audience, and I went over to 2 girls one day and they're texting, and I said, who are you texting? Her. She's sitting next to you.
Smile. Smile at her. Be a person.
It's incredible. So I agree. I think that does affect the attention span quite a bit. Now back to something that you said, which kind of ties to this a little bit, is somewhere in your journey in high school or so, you chose to seek out and own this rather than just do what your parents told you.
Right.
Now that's not normal.
It's not. I'm a weird kid.
Well, but it should be normal, and it has been in the past because we were raised differently, as human beings many, many moons ago, when the buffalo ran free on the prairie.
I was going to say when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but
maybe that far back.
A little low.
But there was a time, and now so many people don't seem to care about those more transcendent thoughts, those more of the supernatural realm. Everything is more this. Now, this has always been a temptation, I know, but it seems worse these days, doesn't it?
It does. It is.
So what do you think it was? Because there's people out there wondering right now, well, what was it that got her doing that? Because I want my kid to get that.
So it was actually a tragedy in the world. Do you all remember the tsunami that hit India?
Yeah.
It was 2004. I was a sophomore in high school. And I was the kid that asked why constantly. Read National Geographic, had a Time subscription, like wanted to know what was happening in the world. And I could not reconcile how a good God, and the good God allows all these people that went to work like a normal Tuesday to die. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I started trying to disprove God. And from that point, my parents, rather than force me to go to church, rather than force me to go to youth group, they answered my questions and they engaged in conversation with me, and they gave me and they let me kind of distance myself from it to then get back into it. I don't necessarily know that that would be a practice that many parents would want to accomplish, to use. Like, oh yeah, you don't have to come to Mass. Like, no, we need to make our kids go to Mass. But my parents gave me the freedom to ask those questions. And I think sometimes, as a teacher, I run the risk at times of being like, oh, we don't need to talk about that right now. But that question that they ask might be the opportunity to answer and get them hooked.
Yeah, spark something in their heart to want to own truth.
Right.
And not just kind of ride the wave of whatever's happening.
Oh, Mom said it was cool. I'll get a pretty church wedding someday. But if you don't ask questions, this was told to me once. If you don't ask questions, the church never has the opportunity to answer. Right. And we have to answer them. When a person, a young person, an older person comes to us and says, "I want this explained to me," we have to do our due diligence and give them that truth.
Right.
And it's not optional.
And that is the great thing about the Catholic Church is we have the answers.
We have it, yeah.
We have some of the most brilliant minds that have ever walked this planet, from Augustine to Aquinas to John Paul the Great. I mean, we have had and still have incredible intellects. One of them sitting right here.
Yeah. Look at him.
He had a great homily today, by the way. It was awesome. But seriously, we do have the answers, and we can dive into that treasure chest full of theology to mysticism to philosophy that God has revealed to the world through this 2,000-year-old faith, and it's a phenomenal church to be part of.
Yeah, we're never going to run out. It's not like there's going to come a moment where you wake up and you're like, I think I got that God thing down.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's an adventure. It really truly is. Engaging in truth and learning truth and sharing truth is all this great adventure.
I remember when I was having a conversion experience out of college, I had a good friend of mine from high school. He rejected Christianity and really just believing God because he said heaven would be this endlessly repeated, anything, even if it's something good, for all eternity would be terrible. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get the mystery part, you know, of what...
You get bored.
You get bored, yeah. And so I think that is a question some people have. It's like, you know, they don't really have that conviction that God's enough.
Right,
you know,
right.
So.
Well, I've always thought to myself, if I think heaven's going to be boring, then I'm probably not ready for heaven. You know, like that's, it's going to be different, right? Yeah. And in that, I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to die anytime soon, but like, I'm ready, you know, I want to get there. So yeah, I agree.
Well, that opens up many other questions which we shall tend to after this break. But we're going to take a break right now and ask you all to stay with us. Don't go away. We'll be back with more from Katie Prejean after this. Welcome back to Life on the Rock. I'm Doug Barry along with Father Mark. We have Katie Prejean with us here, not Prejean. Now your video, you got a cute little comment in there.
Yeah, no, not Prejean. I'm not before denim.
There you go.
I'm well after the Levi's and all that good stuff.
But it's spelled Prejean. It looks like Prejean.
And it's Prejean.
Prejean.
I don't have the accent, but I have the last name.
And why do you have to do this?
That's more I don't know where that came from. That's an Italian thing. Cajuns talk. You'll be driving down a street, and you can see people in their car talking with their hands. And you're like, somebody's going to die on this street right now. Like, texting and driving is not the problem in the South. It's talking with your hands and driving. Well,
they're all telling Boudreaux Thibodeau jokes, right?
Absolutely, which I'll reserve those terrible ones. Maybe if we have time at the end. Okay. There's a couple of really bad ones.
All right, before we get to the youth ministry and more about your teaching and some of that, tell us about Mr. Cutie Patootie.
Oh, yeah. Tommy.
Tommy.
My Tommy.
You called him Cutie Patootie during the break. Tommy, I just got to tell you, man. That should not be a public statement. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't think I've ever actually called him that in person. I hope not. I'm sorry if I did. I love you very much.
I'm just kidding. Tell us about that, because you're dating seriously with this guy.
Yes, yeah, and we've been long distance long distance is over now. He is in Lake Charles. We will be working together as campus minister and teacher at the Catholic high school that I teach at. So we're becoming Jim and Pam, which is perfect because he's from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So the office, Jim, it all worked out. We met really honestly through the grace of God. And like, that's a phrase that people throw around all the time, but like, it truly was God wanted this to happen. We both prayed the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and we ended it, like the novena chaplet, on April the 27th. So, and that was Divine Mercy Sunday back in 2014. And it was a really, like, I specifically prayed my novena for my vocation, because I was like, look, God, if you're not calling me to the convent, which I didn't think he was, and if you're calling me to marriage, then I kind of got to have a guy, right? Unbeknownst to me, Tommy was praying that same novena for that same purpose. We met 10 days later on May the 7th through Facebook, of all things. He sent me a Facebook message because he saw a blog that I posted. And we were Facebook friends because of mutual people that we knew, but like, we never actually spent any time together. So he shoots me this message, hey Katie, I saw your blog, really loved it, really enjoyed reading it, thanks so much for sharing. I've been in ministry for 2 years as well, know that I'm praying for you. smiley face at the end of the message. So I send a message back, and so begins the conversation back and forth, right?
So
back and
begins
forth,
the
back.
dance.
Yes, yeah, the flirting, as we would say. And by the end of the afternoon, Tommy
This
had
is flirting with emoticons. Right?
yeah, see, screens are
Smiley
worth
faces and
something,
all.
right? They gave me him. So he asked if he could have my number, and so I gave it to him, thinking he's 1,000 miles away in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He can't do anything other than like call me, but he can't ask me out from 1,000 miles away. There's no way. So I get a text message about 10 seconds after I type my phone number. It said, "Is this the cute, funny, charming teacher/youth minister that's had me smiling at my desk all day long?" I was like, this guy's got some game. So I respond back, "Is this the kind, handsome, charming youth director that's had me smiling at my desk all day long?" And he responds, "No, this is Eugene." So I like giggle, like, oh, okay, he's got a sense of humor. And I said, well, so my response was, "If you see Tommy, can you tell him that I'm looking for him?" And he responded with the money line, and guy, take notes. He said, "I'm pretty sure he's been looking for you for a long time too." And like,
Hold on, this was the first interaction with one another?
like 6 hours after the first message.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
at least it was 6
6
hours.
hours after Facebook chatting.
Fortunately, there was a lot of, reserved thought on all this. You didn't just rush into something here.
Well, he'll tell you, I, like a week into like talking, as high school students would call it, I like slammed the brakes on. I was like, nope, like this is no. And he said, you need to pay attention to this. Like we need to discern. So, and to be honest, like it's a great relationship, not just because we build one another up, not just because we learned how to communicate, but we work together in ministry. Tommy's a youth minister and a campus minister. I'm a teacher and a youth minister. At the end of the day, we're able to have conversations about mission and evangelization and how we're spreading the faith, but we're also able to turn that off and just be Tommy and Katie watching Parks and Rec, So like we're able to balance that. We've made each other better ministers. He's made me much more extroverted in ministry. I've calmed him down a little bit in some regard. So we pair off of each other. He's the best blessing of my life. And I'll stop gushing. Okay, gushing done.
Mr. Cutie Patootie. Yeah. Never gonna forget that one. Yeah. All right. So about the youth ministry then, that's not your job. That's kind of your hobby, you said, on the side of being an actual teacher.
Right. Well, I do get paid to do it, but I would do it for free. Hopefully my pastor's not watching and I continue to still get my paycheck.
Do you want to say that on TV?
So I'm a parish youth director. My main responsibilities are to run our Bible study once a week, which will have anywhere from 10 kids to 80 kids, depending on the week, depending on what's going on, depending on the topic. And what we basically do with that is just break open the Sunday gospel. And then in youth ministry, I also run our Life Teen program for our parish, which is our Sunday night religious education program for our high school students. And then that has led to being able to travel and to speak. And my favorite thing about youth ministry, far different than teaching, it's kids that want to be there. So there's a different interaction there. You can share the truth in a more, personal is not the right word. I don't know what the word would be. But in a way, like they're hungry. Yeah. Students in the classroom are hungry, but their parents wrote a check and that's why they're sitting in the classroom. A kid that came to Bible study on Wednesday night, maybe they showed up for the free pizza, but they probably showed up because we're going to talk about the Word.
Yeah, there's some sort of legitimacy or sincerity in their reason for being there that helps open the heart a little bit more, I think, to receive it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to standard operating confirmation retreats that they have to do it, check that box, mandatory in order to be confirmed, and you start the retreat off with, okay, who doesn't want to be here right now? And 80% of the hands go up.
Who wrote that into the script of confirmation retreats? That's what I want to know, because they need to get slapped. Like, no, you don't ask a kid if they want to be here. You make them want to be here. You make it the place that is desirable. That's how we get people through the doors of the church. Make the truth something that's attractive.
Okay, on that note, how do you do that? I mean, what is your way of thinking and your method of trying to help people be attracted to the truth?
Well, I think, and maybe it's a shot in the dark when I say this, but the truth is the most powerful thing in the world. That's not a shot in the dark. That's a true statement, right? The truth, and St. Augustine said this, we don't have to defend the truth. The truth is like a lion. It can defend itself, right? Well, our job is to really be stewards of the truth and to share that. And so I think authentic witness, I've been changed by the truth. I've met Jesus Christ. I want to tell you how he changed my life, and I think he can change yours too. But not in like that cheapy, that creepy way, like, have you made Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior, Doug? Like, has that really happened yet? Like, not that way, but like, this was a cool moment in my life where Jesus changed it. And I think maybe you could have that moment as well. Like, that's, so authentic witness to it. And then, you don't pester. Right? There's nothing worse than an evangelizer that never leaves a person alone. Like the truth, we invite them to the truth. We say, this is what the truth is. This is who the truth is. This is how the truth can change your life. Come and see. I mean, Jesus does it in the Gospels. He looks at Andrew and John, and he doesn't answer their question. They say, where are you going? Where are you staying? And he doesn't tell them. He says, come and see. And whatever happened when they went and saw was so life-changing that they remembered what time it was. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think when we do that as evangelizers, we invite them to this experience, to this encounter with Christ. Whether it's in the classroom, whether it's at the Bible study, whether it's on a stage, whether it's in a conversation with somebody in the grocery store. Like when we invite them to that experience of the truth, something's going to happen. Because at that point, we're arbiters of it. We're allowing God to be God.
Yeah, that's something that I was struck by many years ago, realizing that on a physical level, we're all created for the same thing. Your body's made up predominantly of water, right? And you go several days without water and you'll die. You'll dehydrate, die, and so forth, okay? We're all in need of nutrition, we're in need of water, we're in need of some sort of activity, some sort of rest, and so forth. And so you can always approach, a doctor can approach any and all patients that they see with that understanding, and it's the truth. And they can disagree with it. No, I don't need vitamins and minerals. No, I don't need proteins. I don't need, rest. I don't need the activity. And the doctor will say, well, you will die if you don't have this. Right. Spiritually, it's the same, though. Yeah. Is that if we go at it with that truth that you are created by God, you are wired for God. And the only way to find any sort of genuine peace, especially in the midst of the most wicked trials, is if you are close to God. Yeah. And that's a presupposition. Just go at it and say, this is the truth. And we have to have a confidence in that, don't we? Because there is grace in truth itself, isn't there?
I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a student and been like, I didn't succeed. I didn't get through to them. They're not accepting it. And then I have to remind myself, but no, I planted that seed. And over the course of their life, it will grow. And that, there's confidence in that. There's comfort in that. Because it's not for us to convert. It's for us to invite to conversion.
Right. To be the witness. Right. And the messenger of the message, and the grace of the giver of the message is the one that takes care of all that. Tell us any great stories. Like, what have you heard from the young people with this sort of method or approach of just kind of, here it is?
Yeah, like this. So I typically in my classroom especially will tell stories of my own, like quirky moments, awkward moments, things that have happened that have shown me who Jesus is. And so one of my youth group kids, so it's not in the classroom, but at youth group I was using this same method. And he just texted me out of the blue one night and he's like, hey, Katie, can you tell me a little bit about like how the mass readings are structured? I was like, what do you, like it was a random question. I was like, what do you mean how the mass readings are structured? Like I just assumed this was common knowledge for any normal Catholic person. And he said, no, well, like you mentioned how like you went into Mass and you didn't realize that that was the gospel for the day, and it ended up being a gospel that you had just studied in your grad school class. And so like, how do I get one of those moments? Like, how do I know what the gospel's gonna be? So I thought it was kind of a cool thing, because this is the same kid that 3 months earlier had texted me one night and said, got my driver's license, I can go to Mass on Sunday now. I'm like, how heartbreaking is that? Because your parents should have been bringing you to Mass, but he wanted to go so desperately that he had to get his driver's license and get a car to go. So this kid's hungry, he's wanting it. And so it makes my job easy just to get to share it with him. So I gave him a missile, like an
ICBM, a big one?
Oh yeah, a bazooka. No, I gave him the Roman missile, like the daily Roman missile.
Okay. Oh, the book.
And I set the pages for him, and I gave it to him, and he was all excited about it. Well, just last night at my youth group on Wednesday night, we asked them, like we're asking silly questions. Is the best present you've gotten in the past 6 months? You know, some kids, like one kid had an Apple Watch, like, oh, this, you know. one kid said, like, she got this really cute pair of Toms that she wanted, those shoes. And he held up his missile. And it was secondhand. Like, I don't know if he realizes that. Like, it was my leftover one, because I got the leather one.
It was something you stole from the previous youth minister.
Exactly, right? It was left in the office, and I just passed it off to him. But it was so cool. It was like, so the same kid that wanted to go to church and had to get a driver's license to get to go to church, and the same kid that didn't know how the Mass readings were structured because he was so uncatechized in his own home, now he has this missile, and like that for him, he's been going to daily Mass ever since. Like, and if I had to guess, this kid's got a vocation. And it's not because of anything that I did. I just told him a story about how the gospel reading was pretty cool. And it did something for me that day. And I wanted them to have that same kind of experience. It doesn't have to be complex. You just have to be yourself.
Okay, speak to the parents.
Yeah, moms and dads.
Yeah, because you brought it up, we need to get into that because
Yeah.
that's a huge part.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of parents, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on just the fact that so many parents in so many different places, CCD classes, the confirmation classes and such. I mean, I've been hearing this for years. Well, you know, 30% of these kids, 20% of these kids come to CCD on Wednesday night or whatever it may be, and those are the only ones that are going to Mass. The 70 or 80%, the parents drop them off, they don't even go to church.
Right.
Okay, so what do you want to say to those out there who might be listening, might be scanning the radio channel and find this show and they're hearing you, or the grandparents or the parents that might be hurting, struggling, they're at their wits' end. What do I do? What do I do? I just want to give up. I just want to, but you've already said a couple of times about the importance of the parents getting the kids to the sacraments and being that primary educator.
Right.
Okay, what do you say to the parents about the importance of this? Primary evangelizer,
As a
mom and
primary
dad.
evangelizer,
Yeah.
you're doing okay. Like, and I mean, okay is not good enough. You need to be doing great. But I think sometimes parents, they judge themselves more harshly than we could. You know, like they look in the mirror and they're like, I'm failing on my child. You might be, but that doesn't mean that you just stop and give up and you throw your hands up in the air. I'm not a parent, but I have really great parents. And my parents always did for me two things. We said grace before meals every single time, whether we were in a restaurant or not. And it was subtle, but watching my dad lead our family in that simple prayer showed me that my parents had that faith. It takes 10 seconds to say the grace before your meals, right? There's a show on EWTN about grace before meals. Go watch that. But that little subtle family prayer. And it wasn't holding hands and seance moment. It was just, this food is from God and we thank him for that, right? So pray with your children. And your kids are going to respect you for that. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be weird. But they'll respect you for that.
But there's consistency there? There has to be consistency.
There has to be consistency there. Yes, you're right.
And you emphasize that your dad was a big part of that.
My dad was a huge part. My dad and my mom are very different people. My mom is very, she's more reserved. My dad's more boisterous and outgoing and extroverted. So it was easier for my dad to do that. But my mom goes to daily Mass every day. And she sits there with her missal and a pencil. And she takes notes. And I never noticed it until I was in college and I went to daily Mass with her one morning at 6:30 in the morning. She's dragging me out of bed to go to church. It's my summer break. I have no desire to be there. But watching her bow her head, watching her write in her missal, your kids are consuming so much. As the parent, it's your job to show them the one thing that they need, which is authentic love of Christ, which comes from a prayer life and praying together. The second thing I would say to parents, and this one's going to be a little harder, you have to set rules. And rules have to be followed. And if you tell your child you're going to youth group and you're gonna like it, your kid's probably gonna hate you. But if that's just what your family does, you're a family where your kid goes to youth group, or your kid goes to CCD, and you stick to that, over time your kids are gonna respect you more for sticking to the rule. Like, that's just what we do in this family. That's just the tradition of our family. And so I think build, again, that consistency. They see that witness in prayer, but then they also know that this is a standard that's set. And if you're not at that point, because as a family you haven't ever established those rules, and you think, oh, it's too late, my child's 16 and I have no idea what they do on a Friday night, then don't lose hope. Give your child to Mary, especially, I would say. Which, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But give your child over to somebody who was the best parent ever.
Right. Well, great bit of advice there, especially, is just don't lose hope.
Don't lose hope. No, you're doing okay.
We all fall. We all make mistakes. I mean, you know, the more our kids, and I have 5, and my oldest is 23, and my youngest is 14, and the more they see me drag myself to that confessional over and over and over, every week or two for years, trying to get the daily Mass, praying that rosary, keep a rosary on me at all times, one in my car, 2 on my desk. Always they see that, whether you're verbally saying it to them or not, and we need to be doing that too as parents. They're seeing you live it, and they see you fight through it. And that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
It's a big part of the evangelization. Makes the youth ministry work a little bit easier.
It does. We're on the same team.
When mom and dad are engaged in that, you bet. All right, we're going to go to break. Be back, one more segment with Katie. Going to get deep on this next segment. Very, very deep. Crawfish deep. Don't go away. Back after this. And we're back to our final segment. I'm Doug Barry, along with Father Mark. We have Katie Prejean with us, and she is a youth minister in Lake Charles. Did I say that okay?
Yeah,
Lake Charles, Louisiana.
That one's that's not a tough one.
Lake Charles. Did I say Lake Charles okay?
Yeah,
no, Prejean.
Lack of Charlie. Yeah.
Lack of Charlie. That's good. All right, this is our last segment. We got to get deep. Got to go deep here. Okay.
Get in.
You said, by the way, before we get really deep, you said during the break there, great idea. What your parish does, you said this has been incredibly successful to help draw young people to that place where they can have an opportunity to have an encounter with God in a sacramental way, which is, of course, Mass.
Right, Mass.
Confession,
yeah.
These are the sacraments.
There's nothing better than the sacraments. Nothing I can offer is going to be better than receiving Jesus or receiving grace in the confessional. So my mom, like I mentioned earlier, goes to morning Mass every day. Her missal's like falling apart because of the notes she's taken. I gave her a case the other day, and she's like, "No, I don't want it. I like the rough and tumble look of my missal." So it's her battle scar.
Yeah,
but
she's battle ready.
She is. She's a strong woman. I would not want to be in a fight with her. She would win. But so she inspired morning Mass starts your day off right. Like things get going when you have Jesus in your system, like figuratively and literally. So we started doing this thing called Jesus in Java, as cheesy as the name is. So 6:30 morning Mass, and if a teenager comes, we invite them, and they know about it. We post it all over Instagram and social media, and they text about it the night before. There's a little coffee shop in our town called Cece's, and we go get coffee and donuts after morning Mass. First time we did it, and I only advertised it with 24 hours advance notice. I came up with it when I was sitting in the Atlanta airport, of all things, of all places. So put this little advertisement together, throw it out there. 31 teenagers and young adults showed up on that first Tuesday morning. Now they were
6:30 a.m.
for 6:30 a.m. Mass for donuts and coffee afterwards. I know they came for the donuts and coffee. They keep coming back because of Jesus. I just had lunch with my boss the other day, and he said, "Katie, I have to compliment you." And I said, "Oh gosh, I'm in trouble," because he only ever compliments me when he wants something or when I've done something wrong afterwards. So we're sitting there and we're eating lunch, and he said, "You know, there have been more kids in the confessional line lately than there have been adults." I said, I don't know if that's a compliment to the youth minister, because they're doing but he said, "No, but they're there. They're going." Right. And they're confessing stuff that, like, they're not being overly scrupulous, but they're noticing, like, this is leading me further. And he said, and it's not at 5:30 in the afternoon. It's at 6:30 in the morning. And that's pretty cool. So it's been successful. If you have Mass at your parish, I would say, without a doubt, one of the easiest gets for youth ministry, invite them to Mass and feed them afterwards. We don't pull out our Bibles and, like, start yelling about Jesus in the coffee shop. They know we're the Catholic youth group because it's a small town. And half the people that work there are members of my church, but it's just fellowship. It's just witnessing. It's just respectful young people eating donuts after having received Christ. It's a winning combo.
Yeah, it's in effect it's helping to use the natural to elevate us to the supernatural, to get us to the
which is the easiest way to evangelize.
Yeah,
use what we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now big question here. The consequence of not evangelizing. We have a lot that's been said for many years now, thanks to the great St. John Paul II, about the new evangelization or re-evangelization. We have vast areas where people have been baptized but not catechized. We have vast areas where they've been catechized but not evangelized. We need a new fire. Benedict XVI says that our world, the problem with our world, he said this in 2009, that the problem with our world is the presence of God is disappearing from the human horizon, and mankind is responding with more destructive effects. He says there are vast areas of the world where the faith is in danger of dying out like a fire with no fuel. So we're being told by a couple of major popes in our lifetime that the scenario here on this battlefield is pretty serious.
Right.
And it cannot be taken lightly. Vast areas of the world where the faith is in danger of dying out like a fire with no fuel. We must do this. Now, we're missionary by baptism. We know this. The church teaches. It's not an option sort of thing. If you're a Christian, you have a job.
Right.
You have a job. It's funny, we think about the commandments, 8th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Don't lie. A lot of people stop right there. But if you read in the Catechism under the 8th commandment, it speaks about the responsibility of being a witness to truth.
Right.
Not just don't lie, but be a witness to truth.
Right.
Okay, so we're supposed to be a witness to truth. We know that the scenario, the battlefield, the lay of the land is pretty rugged right now, pretty rough. Things are pretty tough, as we talked about in the first segment.
Yeah.
What happens to us, Katie? Not I'm saying what happens, but consequences. If we don't take up this call, if we're not faithful to our responsibilities as Christians to evangelize, what happens to us, and also to those who never hear this then, in the chaos of their lives and then after. Talk about that.
I mean, at the risk of being doom and gloom, we have a goal in life to get to heaven. That's the point. Right. You're not here to have a big bank account. You're not here to have a nice car. You're not here to have 1,000 children. Well, you could be. That could be your calling in life. But we're called to get to heaven. We're called to be saints. And so if we're not witnessing and if we're not calling other people to that, we won't get there. And at the risk of sounding, you know, detrimentally doomy and gloomy, what's the opposite of heaven? It's not heaven. It is hell, right? And I know that's a scary term because some people, they try to like fictionalize the afterlife and put it in like Dante world of, oh, there's the rings of fire, and Johnny Cash sang about that, and oh yeah, there's heaven, and I'm going to play with my puppy dog and have chocolate fountains all over the place. No. The beatific vision, complete union with God, or complete absence of God. And I don't know about anybody else watching, but the thought of not having what I was made for eternity, and like I heard it described once, forever would be like if a little blue jay went and got a drop of water from the Pacific Ocean and flew across the continental United States and dropped it into the Atlantic Ocean. It kept going back and forth. And finally somebody stops the blue jay and is like, what are you doing? Well, I'm emptying the Pacific Ocean into the Atlantic Ocean, one drop at a time. By the time he's finished emptying the Pacific into the Atlantic, that would be with the first moment of eternity. So this is forever. Forever eternity absent from God. And it wasn't an option. Like it says in the Gospels, if you are not witnessing to Christ, he will not know you. That it says in the book of Revelation, you're either for him or against him, or you're going to be spit out of the mouth. You have to make the choice. So let's choose to not be vomit, and to choose Jesus Christ, and to choose to witness to him. Because the alternative is pretty terrible.
And there are several passages. You just mentioned a few. There's the two roads passage. The wide one leads to hell. It's easy. Many are on it. The narrow one leads to life. There are a few on it. Few even find it. It's difficult to travel. I mean, we're told this. He doesn't, our Lord himself does not make this a light case. He's very clear. And I know what you mean about the fear that it sounds doom and gloom. And I would look at my children sometimes and say, I'm not going to be doom and gloom on you. I'm going to give you the facts. Curfew is this. If you're not in by this, the door's locked. You know, and it's really the idea of, and that's kind of generalizing and paraphrasing, but it's a point that in a natural level, a boss to a company, you know, a corporation, a father to a family, you know, there has to be a consequence laid down so people understand the necessity of order. Right. As St. Augustine says, when we have order with God, we have true peace. Yeah. True peace.
And the universe was chaotic, and God ordered it. Right. He spoke, and he ordered, and he didn't just speak because he felt like it, because he was bored, because he wanted to create us. God doesn't need us, he wants us. And then he wants us to want him. And if we ignore that, then we're not living up to our potential. We're not living up to our purpose. We're not fulfilling what God put us here for. And that's gonna lead, that's gonna be miserable. Have you ever met somebody that's just not doing what they're supposed to do? And you can tell that they're unhappy. They're that awkward 80s dance move, that Running Man, where they just stay in position and you're like, you look terrible and you're not going anywhere. That's not evangelizing. You look terrible and you're not doing what God put you on this earth to do. Right. And I feel sorry for those people. I know that sounds, maybe it's a little rude to say that, but when you have, there's so many talented people in this world. So many amazing, gifted musicians and actors and writers and all of these incredibly creative people. What are they using their gifts and talents for? To promote themselves and to say, look at me, rather than look at I Am, who stepped into time to be with us, to point to where we're supposed to go.
Yeah, standing before God on the day of judgment, it's not going to be looking at our portfolio, our body of work, our investments, and how well we did in that department. It's going to be, did you love me? And did people see me through you?
Right. How many souls came to Christ, not because of you, but because of the witness, because of your love for Jesus.
And the first step for us then, Katie, is simply what? We just need to say yes, like Our Lady did, our Blessed Mother. Yes, let the Holy Spirit in. It's a rough road sometimes because we're dealing with our own weaknesses and sins and the temptations, the attacks of the world, the flesh, and the devil. But we just need to start by saying yes, right? Yeah,
we say yes, and we ask for help. I think for me in my own spiritual life, like when I decided, okay, I'm gonna teach and I'm gonna be a youth minister and this is what I'm gonna get to do in life, I thought I could do it all. And I said yes to everything that came at me, but never said yes to the relationship with Jesus. said yes to the busyness, never said yes to the actual desire to be in relationship with him. And the second that shifted, the second I started saying yes to Christ and not just yes to the busy schedule. So for me, that came through reading scripture, that came through going to daily mass, that came through the rosary on a very frequent, I'm consecrated to Mary through the 33 days to morning glory.
Nice.
So like I think there's things that we have to do as evangelizers to prepare ourselves for that. And it starts with the yes, and then it continues with the building of that relationship.
Great point to end on there, Katie. As St. Jose Maria Escriva would say, deep prayer first, action, religious action, is a distant second.
Yeah.
It's the Martha Mary moment.
Yeah, inside,
you know, she will not be denied. She's sitting at the foot of the Master. That's where everything begins.
Right.
So,
amen.
Great advice. Awesome job.
This
Thank
is fun.
you. Yeah, keep up the great work, Katie.
Thanks, Father.
All right, Father, as only you can take us out.
Well, may our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.